Alright, for this first unit exercise, you should download the Landscape Business Form folder. Inside of it, of course, you get a copy of the instructions. There we are. A JPEG of the form that we're going to recreate, and also I'm giving you the logo so that you don't have to recreate it as well. So let's jump into InDesign, go up to File, and create a new document. We do only need one page, but I'm going to uncheck Facing Pages. The size of it is going to be 8.5 by 11. The margins, I will unlink those. The top and the bottom will be 1/2 inch. The left margin will be 1.5 inches, and the right margin will be 1/2 inch. We can say OK. That'll give us our working area. The first thing we can do is to place our little logo off to the side. Go up to File, down to Place. Find your logo, the Wilson's logo EPS. When you hit Open, of course it will follow your cursor until you click once, and it's already pre-sized to be the right size, but you could make it a little larger if you wanted to. As long as it's in the left-hand side, that's where it needs to be. Also remember, you can go to View and change your display performance to high quality so that your logo will also display in high quality. The final thing we'll do to set up our page is to choose our Type tool and create a text box within our pink margins. Everything that we do will be inside of these margin area in one solid text box. So with it created, what we want to do is to recreate the JPEG of the form I gave you. I'm going to go back to File and Place, find that JPEG, say Open, and for me, I'm going to place mine off to the side. This will allow me to see what I'm typing and also see what I need to type off to the side as well. For some people, if you want to get things precisely placed, you may eventually want to move your JPEG over and put it behind the work area so that you can line things up perfectly. But that'll be later. For now, we're just going to place it off to the side. Let's start adding our content. Grab your Type tool, click once inside of your text box. The first thing you need to do is to type out all of the words that you see in this top area. Every time you see a major space between an area, you need to type a tab. Of course, if it's just a single space, you can use your space bar. But if there's a definite gap between an area, that's where you need to type tab. Also, if you see a major line, that's where you need to type a tab as well. Even if there's a line by itself, that can be added as a tab later on. When we go to set it up, all of that will make sense. But just know, when you first type this, it may not look very appropriate. Let's do the first lines. So click here, Business, type. I want to hit Tab, then type Home, Tab School, Tab Corporation, Tab Local Business. I've reached the end of this line, so let's hit Return. There's another major space, so I'm going to hit Tab Farm, Tab Playground, Tab Neighborhood, and Tab Garden. Now the first thing you'll notice on my document is that everything is not lined up accordingly. I also misspelled corporation. ION. There we go. Later on, we'll go back in and add the appropriate information to this. Also, in order to get the little check boxes that you see here, I inserted a special glyph. So to do this, let's zoom in on our area so we can see it. Place your cursor right at the beginning of, in my case, Home, and let's open our Glyphs panel. Go to Type, Glyphs, and the font we're going to use is Zap Dingbats. So start typing Zap Dingbats. It'll give you all of the glyphs, and you can double-click to insert that particular glyph. I'll also add a little space after that. I can close out my glyphs. I can even highlight those two, the checkbox and the space. We'll Command-C to copy it, and we'll put a little checkbox in front of all of the options. In doing this, you can start to see things are coming together a little bit better. Still not perfect though. But all I'm doing is adding a space in front of it, or a checkbox in front of it. Let's continue typing out the rest of the stuff. So name of business, colon, then I'm going to hit a tab because there's a line here. Hit return, first name, colon, tab, last name, colon, tab, address, colon, tab. Underneath address, if we look closely, I've also got must be street address. And that was in parenthesis. Return city, colon, tab, state, colon, tab, zip, colon, tab. And then finally, let's see, home phone, colon, open parenthesis, tab, close parenthesis, space, tab again, business phone, open, tab, close, space, tab, and then date to start. Make sure I do this correct. Date to start, colon, space, tab, slash, tab, slash, and then another tab. So all of those have their own little tabs. Then the last part, description of work, colon, and I want to add one tab, hit return, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So for all of this part, I've hit tab to tab over. Now the size of my font and the font that I'm using, let's select everything that we have. I am using Minion Pro, but the size of it is going to be 10 point, with the one exception of the must be a street address. That has to be an 8-point type. So that's the only thing that's going to be much, much smaller. Another thing I did not add, so we'll do it right now, is under must be street address, there was a major tab at the beginning of it, so that'll tab over for this one. Yours should look something close to this. The next thing we need to do is to start setting up the actual placement of our tabs. Let's go to File, I'm going to save my document, call this Landscape Form. I've got my type tool. Take this one line at a time. I'm going to highlight my first line. So by triple clicking it, we'll highlight that entire first line. Open up your tabs panel by going to Type, choose Tabs, and by default it'll place itself on top of your text box area. If you don't see it, you can move it and place it on top of here. And we want to place a tab where everything will be nice and aligned within our working area. I've selected the left align tab. I'm going to click right about here, and notice that Home jumps over. Now make sure you've got the areas selected. If you'd accidentally deselect, you may need to do it again. Wherever I add another tab, that next tab will jump over as well. And as long as I've got a tab there, that's where it will be aligned. Let's highlight the second line. Highlight this one, and I want them to all align the same with this one. So we'll, with the left align tab, click on it, and you can see when I click and drag, it tells me exactly where it's going to go. Let's line it up with Home. Let's line the next one up with Playground. Line the next one up with Corporation, and the final one with a Garden. If it's off by a little bit, or if you accidentally move it, you can always move it around until you get it perfect or near perfect. When I zoom back out, that's looking pretty good. Let's do the same thing for the name of business. Now for name of business, all you're doing is adding a straight line going all the way across, and this is called a leader line. Let's zoom in. Again, I can move my tabs till I place it right on top of my text area. And you can see I can even increase the size of my tabs so I can see what I'm working with. Use your type tool, select name of business. Here's my tab right here. So I'm going to choose my left align. Let's put one all the way at the far edge, as far over as you can get it while it's still on the line. With it still selected, in the leader area of your tab, type in 2 underscores. So shift underscore underscore. When I hit return, notice now it automatically adds the line for me. We can do the same thing for our first and last name. So highlight that line. We're going to add 1 tab and place the name right here. We also want to add another line, be sure it's highlighted, at the very, very end. So right where that one ended, it lines up, and we'll place one there. That one's still selected, so let's add a leader, 2 tabs, hit return. Uh-oh, didn't have it fully selected. Let's try again. Didn't have my tab created. There it is. So there's 1 tab with a leader. I didn't do it to the first name, so let's carefully click on this tab, select leader, 2 underscores, and now that's been created. The best part about this is that I can always move this around to place it wherever is needed, and it automatically updates my tabs for me. Let's do the same thing for address. Highlight the address field, select a tab. In this case, we're going to put it all the way over here towards the end, and it's already got the leader added to it. Now, must be a street address. This one doesn't need a leader, so we can get rid of it. We can just add the tab field till it moves over. Oops, then get rid of all of it. For city, state, and zip, select those. We need 3 of them, so let's add 1 of them right about here. It's already got a leader to it. Let's add another one for the state, and another one finally for the zip. Now you can see I've just roughed in the placing for this tab. Later on I can go back and shift things over, so if I want zip to be over here, give more room for city and state. It really doesn't matter where you first place your tab, because later on you can go back and change it up. Now let's do the same thing for home phone, business, and start date. There needs to be a line between here, so let's place tab there, and then a tab here. Let's move that over. There we go. Now I can see there's a little bit of a space there, so let's get rid of that. Just tab it in. There we go. Home phone. Let's add another one for the business phone. This one for the business leader. That one. And then finally the start date needs that, that, and this. Could add that one to the very end so they all line up nice and evenly, giving them roughly the same amount of space. Date to start could be moved over. And give it more or less room for our phone number. There we go. And then finally, description of work. For this one, we can highlight all of our lines. We'll create 1 more leader and put this at the very end. This will automatically create lines that go all the way across. So once we're done, you've got all of our tabs set up for this. Now we can play around with the spacing of everything. To adjust the vertical spacing, highlight all of your area, and this is where the leading comes in. By default, it's set to auto, but let's see what happens if we did it at 15. That's looking pretty good. We can increase it maybe a little bit more. There's 16. The ideal is that you want to give it plenty of space that you can write your name. There is one exception. If I zoom in, you can see must be a street address. There's a lot of distance between the address line and this one. So maybe I would highlight this field and then bring the leading in just for that one. That one puts it much closer and indicates it's part of this one. I could even bring in, highlight the city, state, and zip, and bring that up as well. Very good. The last thing we need to do is to colorize this all green. Now I should have done this at the start of my document. Let's create a new swatch by going up to our swatches panel, choosing New, Color Swatch, and the C and YK values are on your exercise form, 80, 40, 90, and 45. So back up here, 80, 40, 90, and 45. We'll say OK or Add. It's now been added to our color swatch so that when we highlight our text, we can set that to be that particular shade of green. The final thing we can do to clean this up is to highlight each of the little areas and change those to bold. So business type, first name and last name. That'll just make your areas stand out a little bit more. Also, if you want to add a little bit of space, like where state is between your tab and your area, you can add a space bar to that. Uh-oh, hit the hide key. Let's bring us back. All right, for the next part of this, we want to add the table that's down at the bottom. Again, we're going to grab our type tool, and the thing to remember about using tables is that all of your editing needs to be done with the type tool itself. There's no selection tool, no special editing tool with the tables. You're just using your type tool. Again, let's turn on our display performance high quality so we can actually see the area we're working with. Place your type tool at the end of your insertion point. We're going to go to Table and Insert a Table. And I'm going to start off my table being just one by one row, one column. You'll see why in just a second. To quickly add more rows to an area, let's zoom in so we can see it. Again, I'm sorry for jumping around. Grab our type tool, hold down the Option key as you click and drag. That'll quickly and easily create more rows. Now if you create more rows than is necessary, you can highlight those rows, go up to Table, and do Delete Row, and that'll delete those away. You basically need 20 more rows. Also, we want to divide up rows 2 through the end of it, 2 through 20, into 4 columns. So I've got the top one not selected. Then we can go up to Table, and we'll split the cells vertically once, and that creates it into 2 of them, evenly distributed. Go up to Table and split it vertically again, and that'll split those 2 further into another 2. Now if you look on our layout, you can see we're going to have some room for the actual procedure, some room for a cost, number of men, hours, and total, and each one is kind of differently aligned. With our type tool, you can hold down the Shift key and reposition the position of each little vertical column. So we'll click and drag, hold down your Shift key, drag the vertical there, number of hours, and also the cost, and we'll give it a little bit more room. Right now I'm just really estimating this. If you don't hold the Shift key and you click on an area, for instance we need more room for this second column, you can click on the second column, or the second row. That will adjust the height of just that one, but it will push all of the other rows down as well. So this will give you that particular look. If we go into preview mode, you can see what this is actually starting to look like. The next thing I would do is to go through and add our content that we need. I can also select these rows down here, and we want to merge these 3 items together. Go to Table and Merge Cells. Select these, go to Table, and we'll merge those cells as well. Now let's type our content. In our first one, we'll type the word labor. This needs to be centered, so we'll highlight our content, and at the very top we can center it up. Then for the cost, number of men, and hours, let's go ahead and type that. So I'll do cost, do it in all caps, number of men, and hours. does look like I need one more. Instead of there being 4, there should be 5. So with this particular cell selected, let's go back up to Table, and we'll split the cells, actually select all of these. Number of men. We'll split the cells vertically one more time. Table, split cell vertically, and that'll give us one extra one. Hold down the Shift key and move it over. Now we can actually add the hours and the total. Hours there, total here. The best part about working in design is that you can make mistakes and still roll with it. Okay, so I've typed out my information. What I need to do is to play around with the alignment of these. If I was to select just one cell, you can see at the very top in our table options the rotation for each one of these. You also get your center alignment and your vertical alignment. So I want this to be centered horizontally and also centered vertically. But to rotate it on its side, we can either click this one, which will put it up and down, or rotate it this way, which will put it down to up. We want the rotate 90 degrees. Let's do the same for all of these. These two are selected. We'll center them up, and then we'll rotate them 90 degrees. Now they're talking this way. For total, we want total to be centered at the bottom, not rotated at all. So just select that cell. We'll center it horizontally, and then we'll place it at the very bottom down here. Same way for taxes and totals. We'll go down to the bottom and type taxes and total. Both of these are aligned just to the right-hand side, so that was an easy one. And total is going to be bold and much larger. So let's set that to be bold and a few points larger. There we go. The final thing we'll do is to type in each of the procedures. So design/planning. Oops. Grading. And miscellaneous. Again, if you need to remove, if you have one too many, you can always highlight a row, go up to table, and delete that row away. Delete the row. To move these over, we can also open up our table panel. Go to View, go to Window, type in Tables, and open up Table. Notice that the table panel gives you just about all the controls that you need for anything you'll do inside of a table or a cell, including adding rows and columns, but also your alignment. And here's our indentation. We're going to unlink this, select these cells, and let's move them over just a little bit. We'll do some right or left indent. Give it roughly 1/4 of an inch. We can also change our font from Minion Pro to Myriad Pro. Regular. Now, to change the color and styling of our table that we're working with, let's do the first one for the labor. Select not just the words, but the entire cell. We can go up to our swatches panel at the very top, and the swatch color for the cell is going to be that green. But when we choose the T for the type, we're going to set that not to be black, but to be paper. Same way for the other ones. Let's highlight everything else. All of this type, we'll keep the fill color be none, but choose the type and set that to be green. Now, as far as the color of the individual lines for the table that we're doing, let's select the whole table. You can see our line color is currently set to be black. But before we set our line color, make sure that all the lines are selected in this area. If it's not highlighted, it won't be affected. So the inside and the outside lines, we'll set those to be green. And I want my outside lines only to be much larger than 1 point. So I'm going to uncheck those, and everywhere there's an outside border edge, that's going to be 3 points. Now let's look at the area that we're working with. You can see how the outside area is much bolder. Down at the total, we want the total box to be much bolder as well, so we'll highlight this one. Set that to be 3 point. You can see all the area was done this way. We'll highlight these two. Now I don't want to see the lines for the taxes and totals, so I'm going to highlight both of those, go up to this top one, and I'm only affecting the lines for the bottom and the right edge. So let's uncheck these, top and right edge. We'll set those colors to be paper white. Also the inside edge, I should have selected that one. Inside edge will be selected. We'll set that to be paper white as well. There we go. Now it looks like there's nothing there at all, but actually these are aligned inside of a form. Once you're finished, you can play around with the spacing and placement of things. I think I need to add a little space between our table that we created. And we're pretty much done. You can save this now as an InDesign file and upload it to Moodle.